on, and then a dry fly is your indicator. So this is, I'm going to tie indicator fly. So obviously bright colours are good because then you know, good to be seen in certain lights. White's really good. Even grey's good at times, but one colour, especially in really bright sunlight when the water's really dazzling, is a black post. So I'll do a black post indicator. So this is just some black poly yarn. We've got a size 14, this is another Dohiku 644. If I was going to, I have got some of them. You do tie clinks. I don't know, has anyone ever tried those? They're Phil Holden. I was talking about Phil Holden earlier. These they're really good. They're cheap as well. It's like his home brand sort of thing. The Barbarous clink hooks. They're really good. This isn't a clink. This is just a grub hook. But so the indicator fly. This is really simple as well. It's just a nice, easy, scruffy fly. So I'll just start some thread on there. I just do the thread to in the thoracic region because I want to suss out. We're doing this as a wing post parachute, so suss out where I want to put the post. Now for tying, when Hans van Klinken used to tie his original clink hammer, he would tie the post on the top like that, do a tapered cut down the back, and then just post it up like that. You can, another quite strong, good way, strong way to do it, is to actually wrap the post around the hook and then tie that in like that, because it can't go anywhere then because it's wrapped around the hook. The most common way I like to tie them in is just literally smack on top of the shank like that. Pick your position where you want your post to line up. Pinch and loop it on top. Just get a few turns on. Put it up. So I think I'm a little bit too far forward, so I can just sort of lift it and bump it back hopefully. If not, I can. If I can do one turn, I'll be able to. Just lift it, bump it back a little bit. That's it. So now I want to post, do some wraps to post our post up, so I'm going to do some wraps around it. I don't like to wrap too high up, you'll see. So I wind it around, use the spare finger to catch the thread. You can put a little dab of glue or varnish on this just to tie it right, it shouldn't be loose. So I don't like to go too high with the when you start winding the hackle on this. If it's all thread wraps, if you're just winding the hackle on thread wraps, it's all very well, it's got a nice foundation, but where you see the point, if you're winding hackle on the bare poly yarn, you see how it flares out, that point there, that was literally holding the hackle down. So if you're wrapping it around the poly yarn, it helps hold the hackle down, whereas if it's just on thread wraps, it's got a nice bed, but it's not as, I think it's much more secure if it's sort of actually just on the poly yarn. So get a hackle. Just tell me if I start gibbering. So I'll get something about the right length. So I've gone for a a grizzle hackle. I'll tie this from concave side up. So I hold the hackle stem just behind the post, just do a turn over and behind, and then tie in. The rest of the stalk should just be in there, so I've tied it all in. And then I'm going to post that with my other turns on the, so I'm going to hold that up. And all go. So that's gone in with the post now. So that's all done, tied in, all happy with that. So I can get on with the rest of the fly now. So I'm going to run the thread to the back. And this is basically it's basically like just a hare's ear style pattern. So I'm just going to go to there. So I've got some ordinary hare's ear dubbing all pre-done. Again, I like playing with dubbing, so we got that. It's a nice sort of dubbing. But I love fox squirrel. You can't beat a bit of fox squirrel. It's just so like coarse and buggy. So again, it's a bit like with the mole. It's a beautiful dubbing, but it's a little bit user unfriendly. So if you mix that with the hair, you've got the really nice spiky fox squirrel. And it's easy to dub when it's mixed in with the ordinary hair dubbing. And I've sort of dyed this as sort of a slightly dunny colour, so it's just a bit dark. I just want to darken it a little bit. So again, just mix this. One of my favourite colours for the post on this is the Aero Wing, the orange, but it looks more of a it looks more like a sort of coral colour than I've got it here somewhere, because it's in with another pattern I got. Yeah, that's it. That makes a really good coloured post that you can see in most sort of conditions. But all the course anglers do this with their floats, black top floats and that. And when in the evening, when the sun's really low, or in the morning when the water's really glassy and you can't see a thing, this stands out like a sore thumb. So I'll just get that nicely mixed. So you've got a really nice spiky, buggy dubbing. Just going to be quite user friendly, and so get that spike at the top. The thing is, if you use a lot of people when they go to start trying to use the difficult dubbings like fox, squirrel, or seal, they whack a shed load of wax on the thread. And as soon as you do that, you can't slide the dubbing around. It's nice to be able to slide it around another. You see how it's all spiking out nicely. I'm just going to whack a layer over everything. So if I was tying this fly, if I'm tying a clink hammer or a parachute for like taking photos of an immaculate fly, I would whip finish at the head now, and then do the other technique where you come back with a finer thread and then do the rest of the fly actually with the thread around the post. But if it's just ones I'm fishing with, I'm not too worried about it. I will just...
So what size thread are you using? That's 70, is it? 70?
Sorry?
The thread, it's size 70, is it?
Yeah, 70 denier. Yeah. But if I was using, like the clink hammer, they use like spider web, don't they? So, let's get me dubbing mixed up. So I'm just going to put a little bit more behind the. So that's another willy for the parachute. So because I wind my thread, no, I'll get that done that way. I'll just leave it on the thread most of the time. Because I'm winding my thread that way, I want to wind my parachute that way, so they go in tune with each other. You're catching a lot less fibres. When you go to tie in at the end, if I wind the parachute hackle that way and my thread goes that way, they clash. So you trap a lot more fibres. So you always be mindful which way you wind in your parachute, because you will trap a lot less fibres doing it. So this time, now we're winding on a post, we want each turn to go below the previous one. So I'm just going to squeeze over, down, squeeze over the hook eye, go under. So I'm trying to keep the feather as low as possible, so each turn goes below the previous one. So that's plenty of hackle on that, I think. So now, so I'm just going to tie it in on the hook shank. If I just tie that in, we're gonna have, you know, fibres standing out everywhere. So what I'll do is I'll go over the hook eye, pull the feather down, and that's opened up a gap. There's a gap in the bit of bare stem there now. So if I'm sneaky, I can run the thread over the eye, around, and just catching that hack away. And I get a couple of turns on before I even think about letting go. Right.
So when you start with a hackle,
Yeah.
how high up the post do you start? And you start as low as you possibly can?
Yeah, because by the time
push it up.
By the time I've got my dubbing, that area where I posted just the poly yarn, by the time I've got the dubbing on, the dubbing's probably gone to the top of that already. So the hackle is winding on bare poly. So the top of that poly is trying to hold it down. So I don't actually really, sort of, not really aware of how high things are, but it.
But you don't start high up the post, as it were.
What, on the first wind to hackle?
Yeah.
No, the first wind to hackle I do tight to the top of the dubbing.
Yeah.
And then you go below, and it does sort of slowly sort of squeeze up. It gets, you know, the pressure of the hackle building up underneath. It does slowly squeeze it up, I think. But so now we'll get nice and tight, try and tease all the fibres out of the way without cutting the thread. I hate that noise, bobbin holder hitting the top of the tail. It's horrible. You don't want that. So now I can just add a little bit more dubbing, just in front of the hackle. So this is probably, it's not the prettiest way to tie a parachute, this, but it's a good workman way of doing it. It works. It's strong. It's pretty quick and easy. I'm a crammer. I've been told I'm a crammer because I literally tie right up to the eye. And if you do find yourself getting a bit tight, always your thumbnail, just shove your thumbnail into it and push it back. Obviously, you've got to get all these little fibres back and tied in, otherwise the fish won't look at it. Whenever the flies for the Guild fly tying competitions, I know for a fact the first thing anyone looks at when they look at a fly is how neat the head is. So it's always a thing to strive to get good at, because it's the first thing anyone will ever look at. It doesn't matter how good the rest of the fly is, if the head's not neat, then finishes on
What do you normally do about varnishing then? What's your basic
on the head.
approach?
Yeah, I always use that. I always whack a little bit on.
You don't put it on the thread beforehand and try and do that?
No, not on that one. I would do, if I'm tying anything with a tungsten bead, because then you can't, it's difficult to get the varnish in the gap without, you know, messing, possibly getting varnish in whatever dubbing you used on the thorax. And if it's anything I want to tie where I don't want to get the varnish in it, then I will put it on the thread first, but if not, I'll just put a little bit on after. I think young Alex Jardine, I don't think he ever varnishes anything. I think he just does
He does a double.
double whip, and that's it. Yeah, he doesn't. I don't think he varnishes anything. This can be a handy tool once you've tied a parachute. Your whip finish tool, the hook on that. If you hold onto the post, and then you can just use that just to jig it about and just tidy it up a bit. And then cutting it to length. I always rotate the post towards me so I can look down on it for cutting it to length. And I always like to cut it at a sort of at an angle. I don't like cut it flat. I like the front to be a little bit higher than the back. So I like to do a little sort of angle in it for some reason. I don't know. I think it looks nice. But. So there we go. So it's nice. It's nothing specific, but it's very buggy. And you don't need, even if you're nymph fishing with like a 3mm tungsten bead nymph, if you were to hang a 3mm tungsten bead nymph directly under that, you know, like an inch below it, the nymph would just put it under every time. But where you've got it in a nymph system and it's trotting down the river, you know, that will hold up. It's and, you know, it's quite a nice sensitive. You can use just a little tiny bit of wool as a bite indicator on the river. So it's a really good little fly. You know, don't think you need a massive, great big clink hammer. A little fly like that is just the job for spotting your bites. Say some rivers you're not allowed the 2 flies. You're not allowed. In which case you could just use like a bit of you know.